That was a really intense conversation, you guys, just about so much. Let's tone it down a little bit and talk about how the Russian state TV has said that the Ukraine invasion has already escalated into World War III.
Cool.
Viewers were told to recognize that Russia is now fighting against NATO infrastructure, if not NATO itself. Okay, I'm honestly really tired about Ukraine, World War III, blah, blah, blah. I was working on my main segment for my Timcast channel. And originally I was like, I guess we'll talk about this because, the West is supplying weapons to the Ukrainians. They did sink the Russian flagship, the Moskva. And now they're saying it's World War III because Western forces are basically supplying Ukrainians. And then I was just like, I don't talk about Elon Musk because I'm just kind of sick of talking about this. And the bigger issue here, I don't think is the day-to-day play-by-play of the war and the stupid points being made by pundits, but the fourth turning. So I'm gonna use that to launch back to, I think maybe the first time we had you on, Ben, we were talking about the fourth turning, and how we didn't know what it was going to be. Maybe war with China, and now it looks like it's going to be war with Russia. Brett, are you familiar with what the fourth turning is?
No, not at all.
All right. Do you want to give us the elevator pitch, Ben?
I will. And first, I'd like to say that you wanted to tone it down into
was
World
kidding.
War III. I love that. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure the audience
really
also understands that. Yeah. So Neil Howe and William Strauss wrote a book back, published in 1997. I think they researched it for 10 years. And it's called The Fourth Turning. And in 97, when this book came out, it's laying out like sometime around, well, basically there are seasons and it takes about 80 to 90 years. So every 80 to 90 years, there seems to be a crisis period. So you go back, it was World War II, Great Depression. Back before that, it was Civil War. Back before that, Revolutionary War. You could even trace it back before that in England with the Glorious Revolution and a little bit further back. But basically, it's this idea that there's after a crisis period, there's a high. And then there's an awakening, which would be the 60s, 70s, that kind of culture. And then there's an unraveling, which is like, I always get into the music that shows you what the culture is, like the Nirvana, Soundgarden, this like, it's okay not to pretend like everything's great, girls, girls, girls. No, we're going to talk about like something is coming apart. So anyway, they said by 2005, give or take 3 years, there's going to be an inciting incident. And that inciting incident will likely be economic, and it will steamroll into many other things. They mentioned Bill Gates and vaccine agendas in one sentence. They said the possibility for a pandemic. They said the possibility for rural gangs and or urban gangs and rural militias, at each other's throats. I think BLM and Proud Boys and that kind of stuff, all the way to weapons of mass destruction, or the thought of weapons of mass destruction, a plane being hijacked by terrorists, and then it all potentially comes back on the country itself as a false flag attack. And I'm just like, 97, like most of these things come to pass.
So the gist is, aside from their, the predictions they put out,
Right.
which we're seeing to a certain degree, it's that the fourth turning it's the fourth season, the fourth generation or 20-year period where some great catastrophe happens. And so we're supposed to be in that right now. And the culmination is what? It ends 2028, but it should be culminating 2026, like the peak, the climax, the crescendo.
Which is the 250-year birthday of the U.S.
Whoa!
Who's that person who said, I forget what his name is, but he says empires only last 250 years. Yeah. That's its life expectancy. And in every fourth turning, the most advanced weapons of war will be used. So the last one you see, obviously, Nagasaki, Hiroshima. This time around, we were talking last time, like, what do you think it would be? You think it would be bigger bombs or more death and destruction? And you said something that I thought was very on point, which was like the mind. It's psychological warfare, and what we're talking about now. and then dovetailing into the metaverse, I think, it's that, and also this technology that potentially even frequency-wise can modulate hormones. I mean, I think it's already being used. And I would say that there's a lot of people who say that, fourth turning is only like 75 to 80% correct. And I'm like, they wrote it in 97. If they were 50% correct, that's incredible.
Right.
So
is it...
And hold on. Joe Biden, remember, you did that thing where he was talking about the New World Order?
Yeah.
He says in that, every 3 to 4 generations, there's this big... I forget the exact words he uses.
First, he said something funny. I was in what do you say, a high security meeting. Military guy told me this, and it's like, Joe, please don't leak
Stop.
top clearance information. But what he was saying was that a high-ranking military officer told him that effectively the Strauss-Howe generational theory was correct, or at least alluded to this idea. Joe Biden says 60 million people died or whatever. And so he says there's going to be a new world order, and he's referring to the liberal world order, and what they're saying is it's changing now with this coming conflict, and there's going to be a new one, and we have to lead it. So it sounds like even Joe Biden thinks things are going to escalate. But let me revise my previous position and entertain a possibility here. In the fourth turning, the most powerful weapons are used. And we talked about this. Maybe it's social media, the psychological manipulation and control of the population. If you can get a country to worship you without firing a single bullet, of course you would. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's easier, it's safer, right? It's more efficient. You save resources. You don't take out power plants you might need in the future. But now what we're seeing in Russia, Zelensky, he keeps screaming bloody murder. He's warning now that Russia will use nuclear weapons. I got to be honest. When he came out and was like, oh no, the nuclear power plant, and the International Nuclear Committee or whatever this group was like, oh, no, everything's fine. They weren't going after the reactors. I'm like, this guy, I get it. He's desperate for help. Ukraine is being beaten down. Russia is firing missiles, all that stuff. But then when he comes out and says they're going to use nukes, I go, oh, really? And then I see on Russian TV, they're like, NATO is supplying weapons to Ukrainians and they sank our flagship. If the Russians believe the sinking of their Black Sea flagship was NATO and not Ukraine, which they probably do, because let's be real, Ukraine is said to be one of the only countries, or the only country to become poorer since the fall of the Soviet Union. They have the capability to sink a Russian flagship. Russia denies it at first. They claim credit. If Russia really does believe that NATO is supplying forces, NATO is attacking them, why wouldn't Russia say nukes?
Hitler, that's why he declared war on the United States, because they were running weapons to Britain when Britain was at war with Germany, before the United States and Germany ever gone to war. The thing about Hitler was a genocidal maniac. Putin doesn't seem like it. He just seems like he wants the territory. So I don't think he's going to go to world war. I don't think he's going to declare war on NATO. But I mean, if they keep blowing up Russian ships with NATO weapons, what choice does Russia have at that point? I mean, you could always surrender. They could always surrender.
What if Putin was
call
just
a
like,
white peace and just end it?
What if Putin was like, I don't want the world to end, so I quit. And then they just stop.
It's happened many times in the past.
Really?
If you fight a war to a stalemate and both sides decide, it's called a white peace. It's over. And there's no victory terms. No one wins. No one loses.
You brought up Hitler. Have you heard of Tim Snyder? He writes about Ukraine and Hitler's Eastern Front more than Hitler's Western Front. And he's fully convinced that, and I think he's written 7 books on it, that Ukraine was Hitler's Eastern aim and maybe the whole aim. The whole colonization that was happening at that time, they were a little behind, potentially World War I. I'm not as advanced as Tim Snyder was, but he said that his eyes were fixed on Ukraine. And so that's an interesting tidbit of history there in Ukraine. And also, I don't want to side rail it, but this is a book by Yuri Shilov, Ancient History of Arata, Ukraine, 20,000 BC to 1000 CE. So it goes through a lot of history. The ancient history of Ukraine is incredible, and a lot of the spots where there are these burial mounds with 63 caves underneath and petroglyphs that seem to be Proto-Sumerian. So prior to Göbekli Tepe, the earliest civilization where agriculture comes from, seems to be right in this area. And I mean, there's something really interesting about the ancient history of Ukraine, that also where the symbol of the swastika, and some even say the yin yang symbol may have originated there. That the Russians, the Belarusians, the Slavs, the Aryans have an origin primarily in Ukraine. So
it's some kind of sacred land that.
It's like a land bridge, that's for sure. It's flat, and it connects Asia and Europe.
A lot of their most sacred spots were all along the Dnipro River. And also there's Khortytsa Island, which is in the Dnipro. and Tibetan monks claim their origin to be there in Ukraine, and supposedly even have documentation to prove it. All in this book. But the thing is Yuri Shilov and Anatoly Kafishin, leading archaeologists and Sumerologists, you can't find anything in English except this book. And I've tried to get in touch with him. I've tried to get in touch with Tim and Heather Lee Hooker that have translated some of the work. Nowhere to be found.
Yeah, the Black Sea port makes it such an amazing piece of land to control strategically. You can get into basically the oceans, and you can get all over the continent.
Just a quick thing on the Black Sea. As I was researching a lot of this, I find Putin's face everywhere in all these ancient sites. He goes in this submersible. Check out Putin in a submersible in the Black Sea, going down to the bottom of the Black Sea to find an ancient ship.
Interesting.
And you'll see some of the images where.
Oh yeah.
What?
Oh my
What?
God.
This
What
dude.
is happening?
You know, if he
I
wasn't.
swear his
What?
photo
Yo,
shoot
ancient
killed me.
Hold on.
artifacts.
What if Vladimir Putin was actually just like Nick Cage in National Treasure, and they're trying to frame him because he's going to uncover the secrets of Europe?
I did
I'm
not want
kidding.
this power. I must free them.
Yeah.
all the way out to the Ural Mountains, all these ancient sites that apparently belong to the same core civilization prior to the Sumerians. Putin was everywhere. I found pictures everywhere visiting these ancient sites. So I don't know what it means. I'm just throwing it out there because it's food for thought.
Well, I mean, look, Hitler believed in a lot of occult, crazy stuff too, and Putin could be motivated by weird stuff. No idea.
Yeah,
For sure.
the Israelis. I mean, that's a holy land. It's all about that area, and maybe not all about it, but a big part of it is they wanted to be in the area where Jesus was. So a lot of times, I mean, it's culturally there's an importance to people about being in a specific area.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.